One thing I've really struggled with is I don't necessarily look at myself as the boss, so to speak. Like I just, in my mind, I'm still a 22-year-old idiot and just trying to like fit in and have a good time with the team. And so like sometimes it's weird when you like walk through the office, it felt like the boss is here.
Today's episode comes to you straight from the Foundation Insurance Services podcast studio, your home for elevating voices, inspiring leaders, and building the community one conversation at a time. If you're enjoying the journey, we'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach even higher.
Today's guest is Jared Harman, CEO and co-founder of the One Group Agency, a full-service marketing agency based in British Columbia. Jared's work sits at the intersection of brand strategy, content-driven marketing, and scalable business systems, helping companies grow with more clarity, consistency, and purpose. But what makes Jared's story especially interesting is how his background in sports, leadership, and operations shaped the way he builds teams, serves clients, and thinks about growth. In a world where every business is fighting for attention, Jared is helping brands move beyond random marketing and into international strategy, where creativity, execution, and leadership all work together. Today, we'll talk about entrepreneurship, building high-performance teams, modernizing the agency model, and lessons sports can teach us about business and how community impact, especially through youth athletics, can become part of a bigger legacy. Jared, welcome to the Above and Beyond podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So let's kind of start where I start with everybody. Tell me about a little bit about Jared and you're growing up. You're in Vancouver, Canada.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Born and raised. Yeah. Lived here basically my whole life. Spent a year out east in Toronto, but I was a quick trip in the midst of things. So yeah, I mean, I would probably describe myself as like your standard sports junkie, watch and participate in just about everything. Grew up doing that and kind of trying to figure out my way to work in sports, which I was fortunate enough to do for a long time. But, you realize quickly though too, like that dream job is just a job. And so like everything else and kind of redirected my path to marketing. And I've been doing that ever since.
Nice. So stereotypical question, sports, are we talking hockey? Because is there any other sport in Canada other than hockey?
Yeah, not really. Yeah. I mean, more so these days than when I was a kid, for sure. I grew up playing hockey and loving hockey and, wanting to be a hockey player, like, I would say the majority of Canadian kids. So yeah, definitely my focus from a participation standpoint. But again, like sports junkie, like, I play golf 2 or 3 times a week, love golf, grew up a big basketball fan, big football fan, moderate baseball fan. And
Nice.
so yeah, I think I'm one of those people you could probably ask just about anything about just about any sport, and I would have some knowledge for sure.
A little bit. I think I probably sit in that same area. I feel like I kind of follow everything to a certain extent. At some point I've been big into certain things and another time big into other stuff, and it just really depends. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, I don't know, I think it's the underdog story. Like I love, when people ask sometimes, I have a couple of horses in the race, but outside of that, like right now watching the World Cup, I just want to see an underdog do really well and then go from there. So
yeah, it's funny. Soccer is the one sport I like openly admit to not liking, but which is funny.
Well,
the World Cup's
honestly, I've watched more football in the last weekend. I've watched more in the last weekend than I probably have in 15 years. So
yeah, but as much as I like openly have a disdain for the sport, like I know I have some awareness of like who's who in the zoo kind of thing, right? And so I'm not totally naive to it. When it comes to the World Cup, it's like it's one of those events like similar to when we had the Olympics here, where you don't have to be a curling fan to get excited about the world coming together for those kind of things, and it's fun to be a part of. And speaking of underdogs, like Canada might be one of the bigger ones this year, and like they're not often represented at the World Cup, so it's that part's kind of cool to see too.
Yeah, to be able to watch that stuff. And you play golf?
Yes, love golf. Golf's become my sport. Like that's surpassed hockey. As I've gotten older and everything else. Like if I'm doing something, it's golf.
Has hockey translated well to being able to hit the ball at a country mile?
Well, I was a goalie, so I didn't have, I didn't have that prototypical size and strength that maybe some hockey players would. What I was going to say, my mediocre hockey game is translated well to my mediocre golf game.
Nice. Well,
So,
there you go. And you can always work on it. I absolutely
Yep.
love golf, but had a shoulder surgery about 7 or 8 weeks ago now. So I've been
It
on the
sucks.
shelf, but it's getting hot too. So you kind of slow
Yeah,
down
fair
during
enough.
this time of year. But talk to me about sports and leadership and operations. I mean, it sounds like to me, looking through, information on Jared, that really you're rooted in that whole aspect of things. And obviously we've talked about that now for a second, but give me your background in the sports leadership and how you use that to tailor into your business.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just, it's taking a really similar approach to trying to fit in and be a part of a team and translating that to business, right? It's really no different. I mean, you look at a hockey team, you've got, 20 odd participants on the roster and, cliche, but they're, no one person is the same and, different, mentalities, skill sets, yada, yada, yada. And so, our office is, we've got 16 full-time staff. Nobody, has this exact same role, the exact same client list, the exact same skill set, and or the in the same person, right? So I think the biggest thing I would say sports taught me that has become very applicable in like my adult life is finding ways to integrate myself into different groups and understanding from a leadership perspective like how to try and identify. I mean, not always successful, obviously. How different people click and how they what gets them going and what gets them motivated, right? And I think you're again, no different than a sports team. You're always trying to pull the best out of your team and and get the most out of them and it's no different than a coach trying to do that with their athletes, right? And beyond that, I think the networking skills and the social ability of being on a team and having to get along and all those things, like really show value as you get older and have to especially when you're starting your own business and you have to find build your own network and build your own client base and be able to walk into rooms like walking into a conference room with 300 people, whether you're speaking to them or just trying to meet some new people, isn't that different than walking into a dressing room with 20 new faces, right? And so I think a lot of those experiences start to show their worth when you're in your professional career.
Talk to me a bit about, as a child, what got you into hockey, and then what was that path for you in hockey like? I mean, did you just play, early on, get into high school? Did you play into college? What did that story look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the joke about Canada is not entirely untrue. Like you just it's everywhere around you. And so when you're a young kid growing up in Vancouver, the Canucks are number one, and a lot of, especially at that time, like a lot of people's parents were from out east, where the Leafs were number one, and my dad was from Toronto. So like having a dad who played, actually my dad still plays. He's 70 years old and he still plays
Oh,
twice
wow.
a week, right? So when like I actually don't remember having this like massive desire to play. I remember my dad putting me on skates when I was 4 or 5 years old and throwing me on the ice, and like and you just and it's just like you just get exposed to it, and like I remember when I was a kid watching my dad play and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of becomes second nature. And like I mean, I got a 16-year-old son, and it was the same thing for him. Like he just you just kind of tend to follow organically in whatever it is your parents were into's footsteps.
Nice.
So I started playing when I was 4 or 5. I had an uncle who was a goalie, so it was my dad's stepbrother, so he was about 15 years younger than my dad. So like he was still in high school at this time or a little bit older, and so I got to watch him play, and I took to that, and I wanted to be a goalie, and so I started playing goal when I was like 8 years old, and just never really looked back. And I played right through the end of high school. I got like a really abbreviated stint at a tier 3 junior level, and then was a third string goalie in university for a year, which I would joke like, oh, you play college? No, I didn't. Playing might be an overstatement, but I
You
was
had
there.
pads.
So yeah, I took some shots in practice, but yeah, I did. And then like a lot of people who grow up playing the sport, you played beer league for a long time after. I don't play it as much anymore. I probably only get out a couple times a year now, just because, as I said earlier, golf's taken that over for me, and I just, not as motivated to show up to the rink at 10 o'clock at night.
Was there a time at which you kind of felt like, maybe this could be something you were maybe, through high school, you were kind of good in high school and you felt like, hey, I could take this to the next level?
No.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I definitely, when I was early high school, I had, I think that maybe the most like realistic aspiration I had was college hockey in the States somewhere. And like, I thought that could maybe be an option, but I mean, I still am, but I was extremely small. Like, so I just, and, especially in like the 80s and 90s, like, hockey was definitely, I mean, a big man's sport. Like you're a bigger man than me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I was okay. Like, I think I was good from at at a minor hockey level, but I didn't really ever have any like false ambitions, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
So
Was there a time at which, through all of that, when you kind of realized you weren't going to be, maybe going on and weren't going to be a, big hockey star, was there a time at which somebody kind of leaned in and said, hey, this could be a great opportunity for you in this direction? Or has your path in life, we'll say, with regards to where you are now in your journey versus where you were then, has that just kind of been a more metamorphosis over time, or was there somebody that stepped in and led you along the way?
it wasn't someone in particular. It wasn't really a slow burn either. Like I said, like I realized like pretty young, like 13 or 14, like, hey, like, my ceiling is pretty low relative to like I wasn't going to make a life out of it. So my focus at that point, like, and again, I don't remember the exact year, but I want to say I was like 13 years old, like, was like, okay, like I got to find another way in. Like, I got to find another way to work in sports. And so at that point, like, everything for me became like, how can I work in sports? And, at one point I wanted to be a player agent, but I hated school. I didn't want to go to law school. And like, that was the path there. And so the two paths I was like, I guess, looking at were sports psychology, which I always found super interesting. And I did my degree in psychology at university, but the dream was always sports media. Like, the dream after I realized at an early age I wasn't going to make it as an athlete was sports media. And that's actually how I ended up in marketing. I was working for the local sports station here in Vancouver, and I got offered a job doing play-by-play for the junior hockey team in one of the suburbs here. And, that paid nothing essentially. So they said, hey, if you want to be the director of marketing for the team and do the marketing and sales stuff too, we'll give you some resources and some people to kind of, mentor you a little bit, and you can earn a salary. And so I jumped at it, and that was kind of, my foray. So I did play-by-play and the marketing for 3 years, and then, quickly realized that I was not likely going to, build a path in media either. Not because I wasn't good at it. It's just like, it's almost less likely to do it as a media person than it is to do it as an athlete, if that makes sense. There's just so few jobs out there. I mean, this was before the podcast world and all that kind of stuff too, right? Like, you're talking, newspapers and television.
Right. So we were talking about sports marketing. You were doing some marketing for the local hockey team, but you were also doing doing the radio at the same time, or broadcasting?
So I was doing the play-by-play for 3 years and doing the marketing at the same time. And I kind of, for a couple of reasons, realized that I would say, going through university and the later years of high school, I was a social guy. I was getting out there and putting myself and my name in front of things wasn't something I was adverse to. So it wasn't like marketing was a huge stretch. It wasn't like I was like way out of my comfort zone or anything like that. And I remember I was having beers with some friends, and, one of the guys who was with us was like a fairly prominent sports broadcaster in Canada, and actually now down in Tampa with the Lightning. And I was picking his brain about getting into that world. And he said to me, he goes, Jared, there's 1 million of yous waiting for me to get hit by a bus so that they could have my job. And you
Makes
look
sense.
And I mean, you look at, for any people who grew up playing sports and loving sports, and you look around your friend group, there's probably a good chunk of those people that would love to be a play-by-play guy or girl in whatever professional sport or in media. It's a pretty appealing gig if you love that stuff. And so I remember that kind of just sitting with me like, man, yeah, this is going to be a tough sledge, and there's not a ton of money in it. Not that it was all about the money, but it was just having a good lifestyle and everything else. And
You got to make a living too, right?
exactly. And so I was like, okay. and I was having some success. I was a couple of years into the marketing job too at that point. So I shifted gears. Timing was good. I had just gotten married. We were about to have our first kid. So, traveling on the bus was a lot less appealing than it was 3 years earlier. And yeah, so just shifted gears and dropped out of it altogether. I tried to, and I still kind of try to keep I still love media. If I could, have my way, I would be doing something like that on a regular basis. But yeah, and that's when everything really changed and just shifted gears and everything became about, business and utilizing the skills I had and the stuff I had learned from, those mentors that I was fortunate enough to get to learn from, and been on that path ever since.
Thinking back on that time in your life, if you can remember then, what did success look like, or how did you define success at that period of time?
Honestly, I think the way I've always and still defined success, not to be like overly cheesy or cliche, it's just being able to provide for the family in a way that you don't have to worry about putting food on the table every week. I mentioned my son, I got a daughter as well. They both are pretty active, and that costs money these days. And it just being able to do those things and just live life without having to watch every penny, I think was always just the way to be able to enjoy it without a ton of concern or stress about what next week was going to look like. And that's never changed. Even with when we started the agency, it was never like, okay, I want to get rich and drive a Ferrari. It was just like, yeah, like I'd love to be able to work in an environment that I like, doing a job that I like, and able to put a roof over our heads that we are comfortable in, and take the odd vacation. It was pretty simple, actually. It was never anything really more than that.
What is, with regards to the agency, and it's the One Group agency, correct?
Yep.
What services do you provide within the One Group?
Yeah, so when we started, we were really content focused. So photo, video, content creation, that was our starting point. When for the first 2 years we were in existence, it was just me and my business partner, Matt. So Matt handled all the content. I handled all the administrative stuff, sales, as well as a little bit of the social media management. But as we've grown out, so now, like I said, we're full service in the sense that and all in-house too. So web design development, social media management, digital ad, and performance marketing. Obviously still content creation, graphic design. So yeah, we try to have built ourselves as really like a true one-stop shop. Like you don't need to look outside of what we have within the organization, and which ideally makes it a lot easier for our clients to work with us because they're not piecing stuff out. Plus our team is local, and you can actually hop on the phone and talk to someone if you want.
And has the organization gone international now at this point? I mean, you both mostly North America? Are you across the world? Where's your footprint?
I would say like we're still heavily focused on the West Coast. It's just easier, and there's just certain aspects that like become more challenging and more expensive to ship out in terms of us hopping on a plane. Like for someone to pay for us to fly to Toronto and create content for them, they're pretty confident in saying there's some good content creators there, and you don't need to pay the cost of us flying out. That said, we have worked all over North America. We have some clients that we work with regularly around the U.S. And, we have been to Europe and places like British Virgin Islands. It's not common. Like one of the interesting parts is like our dollar has continued to tank, as there has been, a bit of a rise in like U.S. companies realizing that they can book, even if you factor in those flights, we're still cheaper than going local because with the conversion, they're paying 50 cents on the dollar, right? So yeah, we've definitely expanded our network that way. And part of our next step is trying to expand that even further and kind of cement ourselves more as, a global, or at the very least, North American leader in what we do.
When you have businesses come to you, or we'll say whether it's owners and operators, when they come to you and they're like, hey, I'm posting, I'm getting a lot of content out, I'm pushing things, but I'm just not seeing any traction. What's typically the issue? Is there one, or is it really kind of a host of things?
It depends. It could be a host of things. It could be just one. The easiest way or easiest place to start is, are you creating content that's going to resonate and connect with your audience, right? If you're trying to target a younger demographic and you're posting Canva graphics, probably not going to work, right? And so I think the first question anybody's always got to ask is, and it can be hard because just because your audience is a demographic doesn't mean that you fit into that demographic. And if you can't pull yourself away from what you like to see and put yourself in a place to what your audience wants to see, that can often be the first challenge that that we see with what our clients are doing is, I get it. You think this camera graphic's super engaging and awesome, but it's not what your target audience wants. And the beauty of digital is that you can actually pinpoint those things and identify and show actual traction and results, or lack thereof if that's the problem, which makes it more effective, or should, at least, as long as data is only as good as you make it, in the sense that if all the data in the world's worth nothing if you're not doing anything with it, right? So I think that can be part of it as well.
Do you feel that with some of the AI stuff, it's made your job a little bit more difficult with regards to helping people understand the value in what you do versus going through and using an AI bot?
I mean, yes. I mean, I would say most of the time the people who are, trying AI aren't talking to us yet anyways. It's usually the people that thought that they could do it and then get through it and realize, hey, like, it's still an imperfect process. So, like, the reality with AI is that, like, absolutely it's, especially if you're super budget conscious, if you're willing to learn it and understand it, even at a low level, you can definitely accomplish something with it at a much reduced cost to what it would be to look at someone like ourselves or other agencies. But the problem is that most people don't understand it well enough to use it effectively and end up just getting frustrated with it. The truth of it is that to get the most out of AI, you're probably not paying that much less, if anything, less than what you'd be paying us anyhow, because to get the most high performing or high functioning tools that AI offers, like, it's all subscription, but you're paying for it, right? And then, not to mention, like, you have to have a pretty thorough understanding of how to prompt properly and, like, how to ensure that the right learning and the right resources are being used. So yeah, there's definitely, segment of the market that says we don't need an agency. We've got AI, and AI does what we need it to do. And there's probably some truth in that. I think it just becomes a question of, what level you're trying to get to and where you're trying to go with it and how far you want to take it. And like anything else with business, what kind of budget you have, right? And
Yeah.
I think for a small sort of business that isn't e-com based, or there's no conversion revenue available to them online, there's probably a good argument that AI would be enough, because it's just kind of like a necessary evil to have something out there in the world. And so what AI can do for you is probably competent. But if you're expecting to go viral or have some massive success on AI, you might be a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I think I'm just thinking about my day job, which I own an agency, insurance agency, but I just think about the number of tools we have available to us. And I think I probably use 1% of each one of those tools, but I'm paying for all of them. And I think how many of those, if I really knew what I was doing, could actually do most of probably what I'm doing. So
yeah. And you know what, like, I do think like an underutilized aspect of AI, not just in insurance or marketing, but across the board, is like where I think there is a ton of value that just about anybody can access, is the functional use of it. It's not the creative. The creative side isn't advanced enough yet, or where it is advanced, it's not cheap enough yet. But where you can utilize AI to, like, streamline, like, workflows and processes and nuts and bolts operational things, I think there's tremendous value. Like, even just quoting work and things like that, right? Like, it's not necessarily customer facing in terms of, like, consumer, but it's B2B stuff. If that makes sense. And I think that's where there's a lot more value. But to your point about using 1% of it, I think that's the biggest roadblock right now. Is, I would guess, anybody using AI is using it like under 5% of its capacity, because there's just such a level of understanding that goes with it that not everybody has.
Makes sense. It seems there's a lot of strategy within what we'll consider marketing. How do you take somebody, or how do you take an organization that is really kind of throwing spitballs at the wall to see if they can get someplace, to, really focus in? And how do you get somebody to say, okay, here is our target market. Here's how we want to go after things. And this is the product we're selling. I mean, is that all really part of the magic behind the scenes in what you do?
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret sauce, so to speak, right? Like, I think, going back to your first point about strategy, I think it's about taking the time to really analyze that particular business, their customer is, and that's going to change that result or that product, asset, whatever you want to call it, for everybody. There's not one thing that's like you can blanket apply across multiple companies, because unless all those companies are exact replicas of each other and, in terms of what they sell and who they sell to. So, yeah, I mean, I think where an agency adds a tremendous amount of value is being able to come in and analyze what it is you're doing and how you're doing it, and provide unique ideas that are not emotionally or monetarily attached to the business. Because like I said earlier, like, that's where it gets hard. Is you own this business, you're obviously passionate about the brand, passionate about what you do. So it can be really tough to pull yourself away from that and make decisions objectively.
That actually speaks to me with regards to being emotionally tied to stuff. I mean, having made switches or changes in the past, and have somebody, we'll say, critique your work, in a way to try to help you, but then you're kind of like, there's the pushback, obviously, but to have somebody take a look at it that is unemotionally attached to what it is that you're doing, and really looking at it from a perspective of, here's the business, here's the model, here's, what you're going after, without feeling all fluffy about whatever it is, this is what we need to do to push forward. So,
yeah, it's hard though, right? Because when it's your brand or your business, whatever it is, it's like a kid to you, right? There's an emotional connection there. You don't think it could do anything wrong. So it can be tough to hear that. I think the best business owners are the ones that understand it personal. It's about getting the most for your business. It's a lot easier for me to explain, talking about creatives, right? A graphic designer will design something and they spent 8 hours on this project and they love it. They're really happy with the output, whatever. Client comes in and says, hey, I don't really like green. I prefer blue, and, whatever it is. And it's all generally meaningless feedback, but it's the client wants. I've seen it a million times. The designer gets all bent out of shape, all upset. Oh, the green's way better here. I use the green because it kind of matches the grass that they have at the front of their house, whatever the case may be. And it's not about that. It's just about, the client's not saying you're an idiot for choosing green. They just say, I like blue, and I think separating that piece of it. And when a client hires us, I'll often say, when they ask for that, people say, hey, I'm not necessarily trying to be harsh, but I'm going to be honest with you. And if I think your website shitty, I'm going to tell you it's shitty, and not because I'm trying to be brutal about it, but I'll also tell you if I think it's great and you don't need to do anything. I'm not going to BS you and tell you it's one way just so that you have to hire me for something.
Yeah.
Right. I think if you've hired us or engaged us to do some work, I would hope that you're doing that so that we're honest with you and do it and give you advice that will help you be successful. But none of that's going to go anywhere if you're not willing to listen to that advice.
For sure. And I think that coming from a perspective where what you do is really truly built around matrix, and how can you prove, what you're doing is actually working? If you come in and you say, oh, we need to change this whole thing and we need to make this and this, from a business perspective, I'm going to be looking at it going, okay, well, I'm going to be watching, and we better see some traction because I need some ROI on this. So,
yeah, I compare it to my days in sports and events where it's a big event coming up. You're selling tickets and you're just sitting there nervously waiting for arena bowl to fill with seats, right, or tickets to sell. It's the same thing. Yeah, okay. Somebody comes and says, "I'm going to spend $10,000. You want a new website?" And so we build the website. Everything looks good. Everything's great. And now you're just sitting there kind of nervously waiting to see if the ticker starts counting, right?
Somebody come to the website.
Yeah, and buy something, or will they get more reservation? Whatever it is, right? So it's a big test.
Yeah, get a click through. Come on, somebody click.
Yeah, somebody do it. Come on.
How many people are on your team currently? How big is your organization?
16.
Okay. And then with regards to the operational aspect of what you do, how does what you learned in, we'll say, hockey or organized sports growing up and what you do now, how does that relate to the team that you currently have, and how do you use that to drive towards a common goal?
I mentioned earlier, the comparison to coaching and just trying to figure out how different people click. I think that is a huge part of it. Just very rarely does one message or one message type resonate with everybody. So understanding how to communicate and how to work with the different people on the team and to try and pull the most out of them and keep them invested. I think that's one piece. I think very different in a lot of ways with understanding like systems and processes and the benefits of creating, structure and routine, like that you see in sports and growing up or coaching or whatever. I think that is important. Yeah, I think those would be the two biggest things. I mean, you can kind of go into, the nitty gritty, people management and all that. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just understanding that like different strokes for different folks. And just like in hockey or sport, yelling at every player isn't going to work for, it might work for 5 of them, but it's not going to work for 20 of them. And, some of them need kid gloves, and it's no different with staff. If anything, it's worse because they're more emotional and so, that kind of stuff.
Through the journey of business ownership, has there been times where you have felt like you stepped into the wrong thing?
Every day.
Since you every day?
Andrea.
I mean, obviously as a business owner, I was just having a conversation actually yesterday with a client who said that they've been offered a buy sell, or they've received an LOI. And we were talking about it, and I said, that's so crazy because I think if somebody walked in with a check, depending on the day, the check needs to be bigger or smaller, just depending on how the day's going.
Totally.
There's some days where I'm like, just take the keys and I'll walk away today. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to support the family, but you can have it.
There you go.
And then there's days where it's like, that's going to be a pretty big check you're going to write. So,
yeah, I can honestly say there's never been a day yet. I'm not saying it won't happen or won't come, but like where I've been like, get me out of here. Yeah, I mean, there's 100 times where it's you're sitting there just shaking your head, wondering what the hell you got yourself into, for sure. I think for me, I enjoy not having anyone to report to and not having to drive the bus, so to speak. And I'm sure some people will disagree with me, but I feel like that's a strength for like, I wouldn't say just in charge of I like being responsible for other people. I like that pressure of knowing I got mouths to feed, not just phones. The idea of having to work for someone else again does not sit well with me, not because I'm too good or anything. Because I enjoy the freedom I have now, and my life has become accustomed to that. So I think that again for now motivates me to keep finding new ways to be successful and to stay alive and to carry on. But like I said, I mean, there's days where it's hard.
You made me think of something. I have this thought in the back of my head, and I think a lot of people say it, that I'd be a really bad employee, but not because I'm a bad employee, but because working for myself, I'm working way more hours than I ever worked before, but it's enjoyable. And I don't know what the difference is between somebody saying, hey, you need to be here between 8 and 5, and me going, oh, I'll work from 7 to 10.
Yeah.
What?
Something about just being able to make that decision yourself. It's funny you say that, because I mean, there definitely has been days, or obviously have some buddies who work a pretty lax schedule. Honestly, like it's like a 9 to 3 thing, and they're making good money, and they're not on their phone at 9 o'clock at night responding to emails, and or sit on their couch with their laptop like I often do or whatever. I'm like, man, that looks pretty chill. They get their 6 weeks off. It's everything's kind of structured and set, and there's not a lot of worry. But what I always kind of come back to that is like, you're putting yourself in someone else's hands there and for you. And not that I don't trust other people, but I've always been a little bit stubborn that way, where I trust myself maybe more, or just happier that way. I think I always kind of joke I'm a little bit of a psycho. I like work. Like I don't, even if my job was 9 to 3, I don't know that I would just stop at 3. I just feel like I'd still do the same thing. And it's for what though? Because I'm not getting any further ahead, right? And the other thing I always think too is when I was younger, I was a great employee. I worked my butt off. Like I'd work extra hours. I'd do everything, like whatever I could, like kind of an older school mentality that you do what the boss tells you and then some, right? And I don't think I'm as agreeable as I was when I was 25 anymore. And just when I was 25, like I was trying to do it all, and like I don't want to do it all anymore either. I'm not as ambitious or as I used to be, which is what scares me. Like to your comment, I don't think I'd make a good employee anymore, right? Like I'd sleep in and not be worried about getting there on time and forget that I have to be somewhere on time.
Right. Wait, what? I have to be at a meeting for what purpose is that meeting?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, I have to wear a shirt and tie to work. I don't want to do those things, right? So it's, like I said, the older I get, the more stubborn I get with that stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. As you've developed your team, as your business has grown and as the team has grown, has your definition of leadership and how you lead your team changed over time?
I don't know my definition of it. My approach definitely has, because with a smaller team, you don't really have to work at staying connected with people. I remember when we first started to grow from just the two of us, and we were in this office that was pretty small, and there was 5 of us. And even if I didn't want to know what they were doing or talking about or what was happening at home, like I couldn't avoid it because they were 3 feet away from me. Right. And that was great. It was that was cool. That in a lot of ways, set the foundation for who we are now. But now with a bigger staff and a bigger office and all these things, I don't, if I didn't want to, I could sit in my own office with my door shut all day and not know anybody and just expect them to do their job and nothing more. So you have to adapt and adjust your ways and your approach. And I think that's what's changed more than anything. And I've had to work harder at trying to maintain a positive culture, and be in tune with what's happening with who and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't before just kind of happen for me now. It's okay. I've got to actually find time to sit down and meet with people and do things that we didn't have to do when we were 5 people.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you have a client or an employee that is coming at you for something that is really kind of a misunderstanding, and you've had to work through that in order to find a quality resolution or a good resolution to the situation, where you may have had to step back, and some people might see it as a loss, but in the end it was a win?
I don't know about the loss or win part, because I'm not sure I follow it through that much just to find out where it shakes at. But I think one of the easiest things to do is not a good thing when you're in a position like I am, is to just not always be hyper considerate of what the team is going through or thinks. And one thing I've really struggled with is I don't necessarily look at myself as the boss, so to speak. I just, in my mind, I'm still a 22-year-old idiot and just trying to fit in and have a good time with the team. And so sometimes it's weird when you walk through the office and it's all the boss is here, it's just a different mentality. And so I think to that point, sometimes I can be unintentionally abrasive because I'm just trying to get stuff done and just hammer out responses to questions, or just trying to make sure that the team has what they need and not really giving a lot of thought to they might be intimidated by me or worried about how I'm judging them on these things, even though in my mind I'm playing golf somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Just trying to
You're playing golf. I get that one actually quite a bit. It's you're just out playing golf. It's worked a long time and hard work to get to this point.
And man,
taking a lot of risk.
It's funny. I golf a lot, and I'm definitely conscious. I don't know, what conflicts I might create, but yeah, there is a part of me that's it shouldn't matter. And I don't know, but that's a whole other conversation.
Well, I think to catch up, sorry about that, but I think one of the misconceptions maybe is that, if I'm out playing golf for 4 hours, I'm making that up someplace else. I'm going to be working just because that 4 hours is taken up on the golf course. Usually it's still trying to develop a relationship or something that is business related. I'm not just out there. I shouldn't say I'm not just out there to have a good time. I'm always out there to have a good time.
Yeah.
But
yesterday with someone, because summertime for me has typically been about golf, not just because of my personal interest in it, but I usually try to take most of my clients golfing in the summer once, just because it's a great thank you and something I enjoy doing, don't hate, and I've got good relationships with most of the clients. But yeah, but sometimes I'm just going out with buddies too, and because for me, it's always been about 2 things. It's the relationships on the golf course are important for the business, and they are. It's 4 to 5 hours with someone that if you can have a good time with that client and do that, it's going to strengthen that relationship, which should strengthen the business. That stuff's important. I guess the third part, which is just corporate events, which are a necessary evil sometimes, the best ball tourneys and stuff like that. There's a certain amount that you just end up having to do because you get invited or whatever. But even the ones where I go with buddies, and they serve no purpose for me other than like hanging out and having a good time. It's like, okay, like, if you don't want me to be a dink all week because I'm grumpy and tired because I've been working so much, then like, I need to go golf. And it's not about golf. I just need to do something for to decompress for 4 hours, which a lot of people would disagree with. Golf as antidote for that. But yeah, but to your point though too, I almost treat anything at any point during the day. If I'm offline for 4 or 5 hours, it could be a Sunday. Like odds are I'm making that up somewhere because I don't just turn off. Like I still eating into my 40-hour work week, which doesn't exist either with 4 hours of golf. Like I'm 50 hours, 60 hours of work is getting done plus the golf.
I've had people tell me I shouldn't look at my phone, my emails and messages from employees and stuff while I'm on the golf course because it screws up my game. But I feel like if I don't, things are going to blow up and I'm not going to be able to get in front of them. So maybe someday I'll get to that point.
Yeah, it's not even the blowing up part from too. Part of the reason why I do is just I feel this sense of guilt about okay, I'm golfing. Like if they need something from me, like they need an answer on a question or whatever it may be, like irresponsible of me to like just completely shut them out for 4 hours and then expect that to deal with it when I'm done golf. I mean, I can just bang out an answer to them and allow them to keep moving with their day. Like I owe that to them if I want to take the effort to go golf, regardless if it's like work related or not. And so yeah, I go back to my comment earlier about customer service too. And part of who I am and like how I've been able to have any kind of success is a willingness to accommodate and, respond to the things that need to be responded to. And so I think it would change the dynamic of our business if I stopped doing that.
Yeah. With regards to success, do you feel like there's been a time that on paper, or if somebody looked at the bank account, they go, oh my God, you're wildly successful, but inside or internally, you were not feeling like you were successful. You weren't there yet.
Always I think, social media paints this picture of reoccurring success and it's nobody posts their losses on social and I'm not going to pretend that I do. So they see the family vacation or car you drive, whatever it is, right? And they just assume that it's like all roses and it's not. We've had some years that are like, yeah, just like holy cow kind of moments in terms of the success we've had for sure. We've had some years that were like, holy cow, we're failures. And I've always just tried to, don't get me wrong, like I've enjoyed it when it's been good, but at the same time, like I've tried to be mindful of the fact that nothing's guaranteed. One good year doesn't mean you're set and one bad year doesn't mean you're done. So I've never tried to overanalyze the current state of the business to mean more than it does right now.
How do you prepare for the swings in business or the swings and misses? But when I'm saying swings, I mean ups and downs, peaks and valleys. How do you prepare for that?
I think it's less about preparation, just more just about awareness, right? And we've been really lucky. We've had very low client turnover in our history relative to a lot of agencies. We've had some clients from day one still. So like for agency to hold on to a client for 8 years is not super common. So I think building a model that can sustain those swings, I think would be the first thing. So, like there's a lot of agencies like to focus on, the whales and the big clients, which is awesome when you have them. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it's great,
For
but
sure.
but once you lose them, you're kind of, you're talking like laying people off and stuff like that. It could be a mess. So I think we've always tried to build a sustainable model. But I've also always been hyper aware of just, despite the fact that we've retained clients for a long time, that like we could be doing a really good job for someone, but they might just want to shift gears for no reason, or just it's time to change up the creative, or there's a new marketing manager who gets hired and they've got their own agency that they've worked with for 10 years in a different life. And so I've tried to get that through that like we can't ever like rest on our laurels and just be like, oh, everything's great, everybody's happy. And like that's when you get kicked in the butt, like in a bad way. And you always kind of have to be out there like hunting for new business or trying to find ways to innovate and keep your clients engaged with you.
Community impact. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that seems to be something that's pretty important to you and drives you a bit, and probably a little bit through youth sports. Why is that important to you, and what about it keeps you motivated to continue to be involved?
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, just seeing the impact you can have on other people's lives can be very fulfilling. If I'm just being honest, I coached my son for about 8 years in hockey, and like one of the coolest things to me is like when one of those kids who was on the team comes up to me 10 years, like, Coach Jared, and like they're just like excited to see you, and to have helped instill some sort of like love and passion for a game that I grew up being passionate about is just very rewarding. Um, on the other side of it, I feel like there's being able to live the life that we do. And like I said, I'm not stress free about stuff, but it's, I'm at the same time, it could be worse kind of thing. And I think there's just some responsibility to try and give back and have an impact. And I know when I was growing up, there was all kinds of people that were donating their time, their money, and their energy to allow me to experience some of the things I experienced. So I think I would feel guilty or if I wasn't trying to do what I could. And not everybody can contribute the same amount, money, time, energy, whatever it is. But I think it's important to try to leave things in a better spot and, contribute where you can, depending on your skill set or, what you're comfortable with. And I think that's just been a big thing for me. I think being involved in those types of things, whether it's minor hockey or some charitable organizations, I just think it's important to do. And there's less people willing to do it for whatever reason. And so it's a bit of, volunteerism is a bit of a dying thing. And I think trying to give back, like, I'm not like want for anything. I get to go on vacations, have beers with my friends and golf and do all those things. Right. So, to put aside a couple hours every month to try and make a difference for some people who maybe don't have those same fortunes that, like are fortunate opportunities that I do. Like, I think it would be kind of shitty of me if I did.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think? And I'm going to say young athletes, because I'd say kids, but I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But what do you think young athletes can learn from organized sports that tail into or can help develop them into business?
I think similar to what I said before about having like structure and what like routines can do to help you as you get older. I think the value of putting in work to accomplish something, like whether that's to make the team that you want to make, whether that's to, win the tournament that your team wants to win. Nothing comes without work. Like to be clear, there's anomalies for everything. So yes, there are some kids that don't have to work at it. They just go out there and they're just really good, naturally gifted. But like general rule of thumb is you've got to practice and work at it to get to whatever. Even if you just want to play like the lowest level of hockey out there, like at some point you have to put in work to learn how to skate so that you could play at that level. And, nothing comes without that effort. So I think, and that's the kind of stuff that when you get into the real world where you realize that like nothing is for free. Like I think having that understanding that, okay, if I work at it, I can accomplish this.
Yeah. You said you have 2 kids, right? Boy and a girl?
Boy and a girl, yeah.
Let's talk legacy. When you're gone or riding off into the sunset, what do you hope that you've instilled in your kids and that you leave behind with them when you're gone?
Always just said, I want my kids to understand why it's important to just be a good person. And like, I know, and not, I think my kid, I think it's like fair to say my kids growing up in like a privileged environment, and I have no regrets for that, but making them aware that not everybody is afforded those opportunities and to not judgmental and just be a kind, good person to the people around you. And there's times where like, it's really shitty to be the kind of good person to other people. And it's not easy, but I think in the long run, it's like that, like the old message, like I say this to my kids all the time when they're having something that they're struggling with or whatever, about a decision to make or whatever it may be. Like, if you can look yourself in the mirror and know that you did your best or did the right thing, then it obviously doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. But as long as you know that you've done your best and tried your hardest to be a good person, then like that'll be fine and that'll let you sleep at night, kind of thing. And you don't have to worry about all the other stuff. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think like wanting to be remembered, as weird as that is to say, or like thought of as, Jared was a good guy. Like that's all that matters. Like I would crush me if 60 years from now, I'd be like, oh, that guy was an asshole. I'm so glad he's dead.
Right. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 of those people out there somewhere. Right?
Yes. I mean, you can never completely avoid it, but I wouldn't want it to be like the dominant theory about me.
I say, if there are, they probably deserved it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
They deserve what they got.
Yeah.
As you continue to build the one group agency, what kind of impact do you hope to instill or bring to the community that you're in and the people that are working for you?
I mean, not to take the same thing. Person, good people. I think, for us, we've grown really organically because people like us and like working with us, and not because we're like best at what we do or super awesome or any of that stuff, but because, yeah, they're good people. I could trust them, right? I want people to say they trust our agency with their brand. That is everything we do going to knock it out of the park? No. Are we the best at what we do? No. I think we're really damn good. And I think there's a lot of other people that are really damn good. But when everything's equal and everybody's damn good, then the people they trust are going to be the ones that they go with, right? And so I think that there's just so much value in that.
So as you were growing the business and you and your partner had the business going and you started developing and bringing on clients, what was your first hire like? Was it an easy thing to do? Was it scary because there was now all of a sudden you're taking money out of one pocket, putting it into another and giving it away? Or
We were fortunate because we did our first hiring coming out of COVID when there was subsidies available to grow our team. So I want to say we knew we had a 6-month runway where we essentially weren't paying for these hires. Like, it was there to grow the business. And so, I mean, don't get me wrong, like there was some like I wasn't trying to hire anybody just to fire them in 6 months. So there was obviously some internalized pressure of, okay, like I don't want to hire these people to sit them in 6 months. I want to hire these people so we can grow the business, grow the revenue so we can afford them and then continue to grow, which is, knock on wood, fortunately, how it worked out. I've also always been really cognizant of that financial structure. Okay, like you're hiring someone. I don't want to hire someone with the idea that I'm going to pay you. We can only afford 30 grand a year, but I'm going to give you 40 just so I want to hire you, which means, oh man, like I might not be able to afford you in 3 months. And now I'm going to have to fire you. And so there is that pressure, I would say, and that stress that goes with it. But we've been pretty intentional about our growth and like guarded, I would say too, where we're like, okay. And like, I think I'm like innately cheap. So whenever like if somebody leaves or whatever, we better replace it. First that goes to, like maybe we can find someone more junior and start off and save a little bit of money for the company, which is, so.
Talking about one group agency, and we kind of already covered this, but talk to me about the services that you guys provide and what types of clients you're looking for.
We don't have a specific, that's the thing that makes us a little unique. I think what I've seen in the industry is more people like trend towards specialized services and like only working with certain industries or categories. And partly just due to how we started just so small, like I just never felt like I could say no. If the insurance agent came to us and wanted to hire us for a website, like I didn't, we needed the revenue. So I wasn't gonna be like, oh, we don't do insurance websites. I was going to find a way. And like that, it's maybe less about just trying to find a way now, more about, I see value in working in different industries, different categories, and like taking ideas from one and applying them here to others. And so not everybody maybe sees it that way, but I think there's some real intrinsic value in being able to kind of have your fingers in a bunch of different pots to see and different ways to do business. So I wouldn't say we have an ideal client, and we've always kind of been work with big, small, whatever. Like we're not just preferential that way. The only thing I'll say is it's not about the type of client, but it's the personnel. It's better working with clients that understand why they've hired us and what we need to do. We've had our best success with clients that, like, to some extent, just don't want any part of their marketing. They're more focused on their operations, and they trust us, and go back to that trust, right? Where they think, they believe in what we think we can do for them. Obviously, there's still some collaboration, but they're hiring us for the right intentions and right purposes to let our team, who are experts in what they do best.
Am I correct that you have your own podcast?
We do. I don't. Matt, my business partner, Matt does one. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I saw that somewhere, and I couldn't remember if that was you or
I did
him
have
or-
one. It wasn't business related though. It was me and a couple of buddies who were dads, and we just kind of sat around and had beers and told weird stories.
That's sometimes the best ones to do.
a
I
lot of
say
fun.
some of my, well, I shouldn't say some of, one of my most favorite podcasts I did was I got a buddy who's got an Irish pub in his garage, and we just sat in his garage and had a couple pints and talked. So.
That's what it was. Honestly, me and 3 other dads. We called it dad buds, and we just sat down and he had his bar in his basement. We sat in the bar and had drinks, and we would have a couple of topics, and we would just talk for a couple hours.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. How do people find you?
Website's the best. One Group Agency, one spelled so ONE, and group agency.ca. So the .ca part will probably throw most of the people off, but it's
Most people off everything. .com. I can't find you.
Yeah.
CA for Canada, right?
You don't.
And you do a lot of West Coast stuff down, obviously, into the States.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
but we've been in New York. Like we'll go anywhere. It's more just about being real. What you're looking for. If you're looking for content, like I said earlier, don't get me wrong. If you want to fly us out, we'll go. Like we try to be honest about that part too, you know, and what they need. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Anything that I didn't ask you about that you kind of expected me to ask you today?
no, I know I try not to have any expectations, this kind of stuff. But it's just a little easier to go in unprepared and hopefully it flows.
Yeah. Well, I greatly appreciate it. And I actually look forward to someday, if you're ever down here in Arizona, hit me up. We'll go
Yep.
play golf. If I get
Love
up
to,
to
man.
your neck of the woods, which my family's getting less and less up there. I grew up in northeastern Washington and lived in the Seattle area for a while, but been to Vancouver and Victoria a couple times. Beautiful, beautiful country up there. But
It's the best. I'm biased, but it's the best for sure.
I'd love to play golf. I'd probably suck really bad because the trees are way too close to the fairway.
Yeah, it's definitely not as open as it is down in Scottsdale, that's for sure. But I don't judge. My joke is people ask me how much I golf, and I say way too much to be as bad as I am. So it's
For sure. Absolutely. 100%. People ask me why I don't take lessons so I can get better. It's like, why? Because then I'll just be more mad than myself for being bad.
I tell everybody I golf with, like, I think it would suck to be a low handicap because you'd go out, you could never enjoy it.
Right.
Because inevitably
Exactly.
you're gonna have a bad shot and you're gonna be pissed. So
Yeah, exactly. And then it's just, that's the game I expect to play. So
Yep.
anyways, well, Jared, I greatly appreciate you coming on the show and learning more about you and your operation and what you do. It's been a pleasure to get to know you.
yeah, thanks so much. It was a lot of fun. This is Jared Harman, and I went above and beyond.
For the ones who started late, for the ones who almost quit, for the ones who built a life one brave brick after